Thank you, Mark. Hey, good day, everyone. I am Mike McCammon. I'm the Executive Director of the NFC Forum, and I will be our host for today. Let's cover a couple quick housekeeping items, and then we'll move from there. So your control panel, if you're unfamiliar with GoToWebinar, is the window you see on the right. You will be muted by default unless you're a panelist. We do have a questions pane, and we encourage people to submit questions. Once I get through about 10 minutes of presentation mode, we'll go directly to the panelist, and then I'll be facilitating conversations with each of the different, on each of the different items in the roadmap with different panelists that we'll have today. So, but we do welcome your questions, so feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to them if we can. Let's see, and yeah, I guess that's it. So next slide, please. As I mentioned, my name is Mike McCammon, and I am the Executive Director of the NFC Forum. I'm very glad to be here. Why don't we go on to the next slide? What I will quickly do is give the panelists a very quick opportunity, say 15 to 20 seconds each, really quickly, to just introduce themselves and where they're from and their roles. And I'll start, and I'll go around the room and call on everyone. So I'll start with Andreas.
Hello, my name is Andreas Wörle. I'm working for Infineon Technologies in Austria, covering systems integrations and compliance topics.
Thanks, Andreas. Kristen?
Hi, my name is Christian Saracin from Continental. I'm the co-chair of the Automotive Working Group. I'm involved in NFC topics since 2014 and member of NFC Forum since 2016.
Great. Good afternoon. Darius.
Hello, my name is Darius Adamaster. I'm working for NXP Semiconductors, and together with Christian, I'm co-chairing the Automotive Working Group.
Great. David.
Hi, Mike. David Worthington from Visa, working on standards and tokenization, and I'm the chair for the Mobility, Identity and Transport Working Group.
Super. Mohammed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Ratni, working for Sony in Germany. I'm co-chairing the Analog and Digital Working Group, and my main task is involved in NFC Forum and also other standardization body.
Fantastic. Stefan?
Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan. I'm from Identiv IoT Transponder company from the US. I'm personally located in Germany, and I'm chairing the healthcare task force of NFC Forum.
Great. Taka.
Hello, everyone. I'm Taka of PIM Japan, which is one of the authorized test laboratory, and I'm serving for Japan Task Force chairperson. Thank you.
Great, thank you. TJ.
Hello, everyone. My name is Teo Järvelä, and as you heard, Mike called me TJ. People usually do that. I'm representing Huawei Technologies, and I'm a technical committee chair in NFC Forum. And also I participate in the BOD meetings in NFC Forum. I'm working on several short-range radio technologies, so not only NFC.
Great. Wolfgang.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wolfgang Meindl. I am from Pentronics and working there in the part of standardization and ecosystem. Since 1 month, it's now Renesas Electronics, and we are located in Graz in Austria. And for the NFC Forum, I'm in charge of the working group, the SIG group of retail and payment.
Super. And then finally, Zhang Yi.
Hello, my name is Zhang Yi. I'm working for NXP Semiconductor as a senior product manager. I'm in charge of some of the NFC and authentication products and trying to boost NFC adoption in the market. I'm a chair of Internet of IoT, the working group.
Super. All right, well, thanks everyone. As you can see, we have a very global representation, and I do want to thank everyone for their time. We'll get back to the panelists here in a few moments, so we'll go on to the next slide, please. Next slide. I'm not going to spend very much time, but for those that are not familiar, I have to go back one, sorry. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but very quickly, if you're not familiar with the NFC Forum, we have over 400 members, and we're the advocates for contactless. As you can see, our board members are very prominent, both consumer and technology brands. We work with dozens of adjacent technical bodies as well to kind of basically deliver all of our solutions across a variety of markets. Next slide, please. If you're not familiar with NFC technology, it is a standards-based short-range wireless technology. It is the thing that kind of enables tap to pay. It does have a range of up to 2 centimeters, but we test to 5 millimeters, which we're going to get into range here in a few minutes. But what's also unique for NFC, not just the short range, but it also can share power across connections, and we'll also be talking about that today as well. And it's finding its way into most everything in our lives. Next slide, please. I do want to make a real quick comment. So we partner with ABI every other year to do a kind of a market report in 9 different countries around contactless. Some of the key findings from the most previous survey is that 85% of consumers do use NFC. We are moving beyond mobile payments into a variety of other use cases. And what I think was also interesting, this last data point, is nearly half of those people that were surveyed that are familiar and use contactless prefer using their mobile phone or smartwatch over a contactless card. So this idea of the migration towards digital wallets, I think, is a very real trend, and we see it in our data as well as in other surveys. Next slide. Excuse me. All right, so with no further ado, let's get on with the roadmap. So the one thing I do want to really quickly share is that while this is not necessarily our formal process, generally speaking, most standards kind of follow this path of starting off with research, going to use case ideation, requirements phase, development, and release. Our standards follow a very similar process, and you can kind of see articulated below each of those different stages kind of what occurs. The most important thing that I want to kind of reiterate, and I will several times during this call, is that the activities of where this is going, when you see the roadmap, we'll be, okay, well, what's going to happen next? That gets determined by our membership. So, and various different groups participate in that, which is why we invited the SIG chairs to be here and our committee chairs and some also from our task forces, because they are the facilitators of those conversations in each of those different groups. So when we're done with the presentation, you can go back and say, okay, hey, if this is the requirement stage, where can I plug into having the conversations to learn about where this is going? It'll be these different groups on that lower level of this chart. So anyway, I just want to make that clear that while we are sharing kind of publicly where we are with some of this, these are ongoing discussions that are happening in various different governance groups inside of the NFC forum. Next slide, please. So there are 5 different items that we're going to cover quickly today, and I'll just quickly read these. So the very first item on our roadmap is around increasing power of our NFC wireless charging specification. The next one's around multiple purpose tap. The third is about increasing range. Fourth is in modernization of device to device. And then the fourth one is around expanded data formats. These will be the 5 topics that we'll be covering today. Okay, so let's go ahead and go on to the first one. Next slide, please. So currently, NFC wireless power is up to 1 watt. And that is negotiated. You actually can take several steps up to 1 watt. And what is currently in development inside of the NFC forum today is exploring and specifying how we can get up to 3 watts of power over that connection. The primary use cases for this particular work item is, well, of course, the first one would be the ability to charge a wider diversity of devices while also reducing charging times for mobile accessories that are already using the standard, like headsets and stylus. And we also see there's some growing interest around standby battery market. So the idea is that there are a lot of devices we have in our lives that have a battery for only occasional need for power. And by having a higher wattage on our side will allow us to even attach to more of those use cases where those standby batteries could be replaced with simply holding your phone briefly against the device to power up a board and do whatever operation you need, as opposed to having a disposable battery that might sit in the device and only be used on an occasional basis. So those are the use cases. What we see the real big impacts on the industry, again, is that this does enable even newer form factors and better industrial design. And we expect this to have the greatest impact in the access control and wearables market when this specification is done. It is currently in development. I'm not going to really share the timeline here, but this is a work that's kind of ongoing right now in the technical committee and the groups inside of that. And we have some representatives here if we want to talk. We will talk more about each one of these here when we get around to it. So next slide, that's wireless power. The second item on the list is multi-purpose tap. This particular item is really in the use case ideation phase, so it's a little step up before when we get to requirements. And the idea here is that there's been a lot of discussions as to, so currently when you tap, only one operation occurs. And what we are looking at is ways that we can implement multi-purpose tap so that when you tap, multiple things could occur. The use cases that kind of initially came out of the initial conversations that kind of got this onto the roadmap are, the first one would be a methodology for delivering a paperless receipt point to point at the time of payment. So imagine that when you go to tap to pay, during that same tap, the user would get back an itemized receipt, for instance, could be a way that we could use a multi-purpose tap. Also, another big item is around loyalty cards. So when you go to pay for something globally, there are lots of different retailers that have loyalty programs that they'd like to get your loyalty number. And of course, today, that's a multiple step operation. Sometimes you have to share your phone number, I mean, whatever. But the point is that there could be a way with multi-purpose tap that we think we could enable a way for the loyalty card to go at the same time. And this is also true. Another use case would be mixed modal total journey ticketing that can happen with a single tap. And these are all things that are currently being discussed in terms of use cases. So what we see the impacts on the industry longer term would be, we know this would affect basically the way mobile OS providers could enhance their wallets. And of course, the vendors that support that ecosystem. And we also think that this could also be an enhancement to the user experience, that as opposed to having to do multiple taps or getting out a QR code or a barcode or whatever the case might be, you'd be able to have this in one particular tap. So we'll get into more detail on that in a few minutes. But let's go on to the third item, next slide, which is increased range. So it's kind of the run up to this webinar. This has had probably the most amount of attention. But I want to make sure I make a couple of things very clear. So the first thing is that our discussions around increasing range are very much in the research stage, which means we are before use case ideation. We're not in the requirement stage. We're not in development. We really are trying to understand, based upon the existing market of tags and radios, what could we increase our range to, and do we want to bring everyone with us? Like, there's a lot of very detailed questions you have to answer. But right now, this is very much in the retail and in the research stage. And where we are today is that the NFC Forum's compliance program tests performance of our operating volume up to 5 millimeters. Now, there are examples of where NFC radios do work beyond that, but our compliance program tests to 5 millimeters. And what we're looking is to how we might increase that up to 4 or 5 times that current range, and that would be in the z-axis. So that's distance away, not x and y. And that's the current research topic that's being done in the analog working group and inside the technical committee. The use cases, obviously, this would improve performance for all tap actions, of course. And we also see that this will improve usability for reader mode transactions like IoT provisioning. So if I'm doing most payment terminals today, when we go to pay, they are usually connected to power. They usually have longer range than our current, standard for ourselves, and so it tends to work often and quite well. But when you start going into reader mode actions, where it's two devices that are not connected to power, we usually are operating more within the kind of specification of our range, and this will improve those performances. The impacts on the industry is that it will improve the user experience with the idea that users will not have to have such precise antenna alignment to make things work because the distance will be longer. If we are able to achieve these goals, the user will perceive that it's faster because of the fact that the idea is that the connection can start sooner as opposed to until you get in range, and it can stay going longer as you move away. So we believe that customers will have it'll work better and it will work faster, which are all really good examples. And then of course, the other great idea is it will also give industry a greater flexibility with industrial design and materials, because if the range is longer, the antenna placement the location of that can be a lot more flexible based upon the fact that the range is longer. So anyway, very exciting topic, but again, this is in the research stage and something that we're definitely working on right now. So let's go on to the next item, which is modernization of device to device. Next slide, please. So this particular work item is also in the research stage, but the idea here is to explore opportunities for improving the reader-writer mode, in part to leverage evolutionary trends across multiple industries. And the two bigger ones that we're looking, actually there's more than just these two, I guess, because I've got the other ones on the bottom here, but the use cases that we're really looking at when it comes to this particular item is that there does seem to be a trend towards exploring in the payments industry, particularly point of sale, there seems to be interest in using common off-the-shelf handsets for those type of applications. If vendors start using handsets for payment terminals, they will be using reader-writer mode, part of the NFC form specification, to do that operation. And there seems to be some opportunities to improve that, and this is the part that we're currently researching right now. And we also see the ability in the use cases to enable and enhance off-network payment systems as well, whereas the current systems we have today are mostly on-network. The impacts to the industry, obviously, as I've just mentioned, this mobile handset integration into point-of-sale ecosystem would be a very big trend to monitor. It could have a very disruptive impact on industry. And then the last one, which is not to be discounted, that we're looking at as it relates to this, is it does increase the role of mobile operating system support for TNAP, which is one of our security standards for doing secure handover authentication of sensitive data. And so we're looking at how we can enhance our modernization, our device-to-device mode over reader-writer mode to be able to deliver some of these benefits. But again, this is very much in the research stage today in terms of kind of on the horizon. And then we'll move on to the last item. So next slide, to expanded data formats. So most of you watching this webinar are probably familiar with our in-depth standard, which is a way for us to do data exchange between devices. We're looking for ways to explore new opportunities on how we might have other data items. And the one that's kind of gotten the most traction initially is around sustainability. This particular work item is in the requirements phase, so it's a little bit further down the road. We are looking actually to close the requirements phase at our member meeting here in 3 weeks in Stuttgart. And a lot of our work is harmonizing around this idea of the digital product passport effort in the EU. And that's this initial use case. So those particular standards are around this idea that every product that gets manufactured in the future will have to have a digital product passport in the cloud that describes the sustainability and the repairability of devices. And we see an opportunity, like other organizations, to use NFC as part of this ecosystem, to be a data carrier, as they call it, But we do think that there's some additional opportunity with NFC that because there's memory on our chips to be able to embed the information directly on the product. And so what we're talking about is extending the DPP to allow off-network actions and even provide even a lower carbon footprint compared to QR codes because the data can be stored statically on the device and also validate the data that's in the cloud. So there's actually some really interesting opportunities here. And this has been a work item we've had for about the past year or so. So the impacts on the industry is that EU mandates will likely exist for all products to comply with this, and we want to provide another mechanism and some additional opportunities by using NFC to do this. And we also see an opportunity as well that if NFC becomes the way to do this, consumer handsets could be used as a way to improve the circular economy as well, because you could use your handset to tap on something and get the information directly off the device about its recyclability or whatever. So a very exciting work item. And again, this is we will be doing a kind of a more public view of this at our member meeting and getting final feedback on the market requirements for this particular item. All right, so let's go to the next slide. I think we're just going to go back up to the panel if I remember right. Right, so that's the summary. So there are 5 work items on our roadmap. The timing of each of these is different. We've been publicly saying this is a 3 to 5 year roadmap. Some of these items will be done ahead of that schedule. The ones that are in the research stage, you could assume are going to be a little bit further out. But there's a great deal of activity and momentum inside the forum for these work items. And this will be many of the topics that will be discussed at our member meeting in Stuttgart the second week of July. We'll be discussing all of these items that I've covered already today. So without going much further, let's go on to the next slide. And I think this will be where I'll go back to the panel here. So let me get my notes up. All right, and then what we can do if you want to is switch over to everyone can turn on their cameras so we can go to the camera mode for the GoToWebinar. So we have talked about this, but we haven't, this is not overly, what I want to say, it's not been overly rehearsed. So I'm going to apologize for that. What I'm going to do though is I am going to go kind of in order of the topics. So we're going to start with wireless power. And I know this is a work item that's been in the analog working group. So what I thought I would do is, real quickly call on, let's see, well, I don't see everyone here yet, but Zheng He, do you want to, since you're on the IoT SIG, why don't I start with you real quick, Zheng He? Do you have any quick comments or thoughts or impacts or views on why wireless power going to 3 watts will be valuable to the markets that are inside the your SIG?
Yes, sure. So increasing the wireless power, the charging level is so really to bring a lot of opportunity for the different type of the devices. So up to now, with quite limited power, so you can handle quite a limited number of IoT devices. And one of the big problem is the many devices has to equip the very small batteries. So it will consume a lot of energy and it will bring the unnecessary carbon footprint. Also, from the sustainable point of view, this is absolutely that makes sense to increase the power. So it will really reduce some of the waste of the batteries.
Great. Andreas, you didn't turn yourself on camera. Being one of the co-chairs of Analog and Digital Working Group, would you want to have any comments about the 3 watt extension?
Sorry, I'm currently having camera problems.
That's okay. That's okay.
I try to solve them in the meantime. Yes, so I can. What can I say? So we were working. So the work on the power charging is done in the task force below the Analog and Digital Working Group. So it's called the Wireless Charging Power Task Force. They were working now to integrate the final tag types also into the charging compliance program. So this is done now, and currently I think we are waiting for further inputs. So there's something on the horizon for the member meeting, and I think it's going to be exciting what we will see there.
Great, thanks. And then real quickly, Mohammed, as a co-chair, do you have any other comments to add to Andreas?
Yes, thank you for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right, okay. So the wireless charging task force is, as Andreas mentioned, is a task force belonging to the analog working group. And the project of increasing the power from 1 watt to 3 watt is not new, I would say. It was on the list of our target a few years ago. We achieved 1 watt, which was not an easy task. A lot of issues. You cannot throw power into the air without taking care about the environment around you. So at that time, there were several use cases for the wireless charging, from IoT, small devices, sensors, and so on. This was targeting the 1 watt power level. We also had what we call the kind of mid-range power between 1 watt and 3 watt. This idea or this use case did not take off because of some other issues that we were trying to solve for the lower band, for the lower power. But there were some use cases. We should not, as I said, omit or forget that going to 3 watt is not an easy task, but I think we have the people for that, holding challenges and going beyond the requirements sometimes, and then solving issues and so on. I believe it will be a very nice experience for our team and a very nice journey to go through 3 watt. We achieved 1 watt, and it has been a successful, I would say, story. Since there is already now test cases in NFC Forum, also companies using the work which has been done in NFC Forum, and therefore I am predicting that how shall I say, the research will be not easy, but I'm predicting a very good outcome and a very nice result at the end.
That's great. All right. We'll get to other panelists when we get to other topics. So why don't I go on to multi-purpose tap, which is the second item that was on the roadmap. And then this is, again, the idea that we could do multiple operations with a single tap. And what I thought I would do is, and I'll call in order, David, Wolfgang, and Stefan. But I'll start with David. So I know in your role at the MIT SIG, and then also your professional role inside of Visa, where do you see kind of the importance of multi-purpose tap, and what are some of the inputs that we're looking to get from industry to be able to help us make decisions to move this item forward?
Okay. It's a fact that the contactless card is great. It's not going to disappear for a long time, but it is a one-sided, a single operation event, and most people's lives are much more complicated than that. It might be that, let's say, in the identity and transit space, that you are entitled because of your identity to some kind of concessionary fare or discount, and you might not be somebody from a particular area where you've already got the concessionary transit card. So with a single tap that proves your identity with a global or European credential, you can then be given whatever concessionary travel ticket straight back into your phone as part of the same tap. That's a lot easier than all of the applying online, issuing cards, and all of the rest of it. A lot cheaper for all of the people involved. And if you can do it as a single tap, it makes a lot of sense for it to be combined together, that mapping of it together. There are other ones related to potentially identity and access. So maybe as a hotel priority card holder above a certain status, or an airline priority card holder above a certain status, you would get given, for whichever resort or airport you were visiting, an access token for that particular lounge or other facilities, the business center, for example, that you could get because of your status. And a myriad of similar things where it's saying, if I can map something to do with my identity, whether that's national, personal, corporate, etc., and some form of access to some service, be it a transport network, a lounge, or whatever. The multi-tap seems to be a multi-event in one tap seems to be an excellent way to make that an easier customer journey, which is one of the main priorities, I think, of the NFC Forum in terms of technology that makes life easier.
Right, great. Wolfgang, from Retail and Payments, what are some of the ideas you've been discussing and some of the impacts as it relates to this particular roadmap item?
Yeah, sure. So we work a lot together, of course, with David on this program, because on the one hand, the multipurposes circulate maybe around the payment, or is circulated around the public transport application. But the dynamics or the characteristics of what would be increasing the comfort to use for the end user is more or less the same. So you can imagine, as already mentioned by David, you have a personal ID and you are a student or attached to any other group, and you get a rebate program. At the same time, you get maybe a loyalty program that you're gonna run, and you should do this in all one tap. That would be, of course, the vision for this activity. And then you mentioned already when you opened the panel, the paperless receipt that you get then after the transaction is done. So what we do now together, of course, also intensively with the group of David to discuss what types of multi-tapping applications can appear and what is the maximum use that the end user can benefit from. And from that one, once we have that one, we develop then in the course of the next months and years, as you said, the technical implementation and touch point with the ecosystem players that delivering then this technology and bring it to the ground.
Yeah. And Stefan, I'll put you on the spot. Has the healthcare task force talked much about multi-purpose tap, or can you imagine use cases that you think would be valuable for that particular feature?
Well, of course, in healthcare industry, we do have our cards for identification. Nearly every country is working with the health cards or health card systems, and there are a lot of processes going on all around these cards. So every additional purpose which we could combine with a card is a big benefit for any patient. So just think about prescriptions, just think about additional data for which you carry from one doctor to the other one. So there is a lot of sensitive data which could be securely transferred via this NFC multi-purpose tab to the next station. So a lot of paperwork can be reduced. A lot of the process could be definitely improved because it gets simply easier.
Great. And I think, and before I go on to the next item, I think that one of the things that makes me the most excited is that, we talk about identity all the time, and one of the reasons why NFC is so well suited for it is because of the short range. We always like to talk about how long ranges are of our other standards, and longer is always better, supposedly. But when it comes to privacy and and intention, one of the big benefits, of course, of NFC is it's short range because the radios don't go very far. So you would not have to be worried about security as much as you would for other standards. Let's move on to increasing range, and this one I want to spend a little bit more time on, and I will go around the room for everybody. But why don't I start real quickly with TJ, who's our technical committee chair, to kind of talk about kind of how you see this particular topic, and then also if you have some insights from Huawei, that would also be interesting, I think, for the people watching this webinar today.
Okay, thank you, Mike. At the moment, as you said, we are working on, we are in the research phase, and we are trying to find out how far and how long this range could be. There are sort of two aspects: whether we use all the polar and transmitter combinations, then it might be a little bit shorter, but then there might be a way to find, if we concentrate on certain polar and transmitter combinations, then it might be that we will get a little bit further. If you think about the about Huawei interest in this, it's pretty much in automotive, in Chinese and Asian market, but also in the European market. So that is, I think, the most important use case for Huawei.
And you mentioned this. I'm going to get into the technical details with Andres and Mohammed here in a second, but I did want to pivot quickly to Kristen and Darius for this very specific use case around automotive. So I was going to ask Christian, so when it comes to increased range, what do you think will be the benefits for, the organizations that are in your ecosystem, equipment suppliers and OEMs of automotive cars?
So in the automotive industry, NFC today plays a quite important role in the access and start use cases of the vehicle. So we are living right now a momentum of adoption of the NFC technology in vehicles. Due to our work from NFC Forum together with other standard industries like CCC, ICCOA, we see more and more vehicles using NFC-based technology for accessing the vehicle, for access use case, and for engine start. One of the issues or one of the topics which the increased range may help and may solve is the basically the user experience around finding the touch point for where the user needs to put his device in order to perform NFC communication with the vehicle. So I think increased range will improve a lot the user experience, especially for the access scenario, because we know in the automotive area we have a lot of constraints starting from mechanical shape to power consumption if you are thinking on the electrical vehicles. So an increased range will greatly improve the user experience for access and start scenarios of the vehicle.
All right. Why don't I switch over to Darius? So you're also co-chair of automotive. Would you want to add anything or some additional thoughts on that, Darius? And
Yeah.
if you're not talking, go ahead and turn off your mute your microphones because I hear a little bit of feedback.
Okay, so I fully agree with what Christian was stating. So definitely in automotive space, we have a challenge with the limited space for the antennas, meaning that if we can increase the operating distance, we provide some relief and generally we improve the user experience. So generally, yeah, we are all great believers of the tabs, but typically you don't want to scratch the surface of the car, or that's why some extra centimeters are definitely something which would help us to make the use case even more attractive for the customers.
Great. So, and just real quick, again, if you're not talking, if you could mute your microphone, that would be great because there is a little bit of back talk. So why don't I real quickly talk a little bit, why don't we explore a little bit the technical issues? I know, Andres, there's quite a bit of work going on here. Kind of very broadly, from an overview point of view, what would you say are some of the interesting challenges and dynamics around extending range of NFC today?
Yeah, I can, of course, Mike, thanks. Yeah, this is, as you can imagine, it's a multidimensional problem we are facing here. So it's not a straightforward task, and we are happy that we have a very active team in the analog and digital working group, which is actually contributing on a very high level. And we have a lot of research work currently going on with measurements and on basis of our existing specifications, and looking into all sizes of antennas we have defined for our compliance committee, because the end goal is to be compliant, or to provide a compliance committee to the market and have something here available for anyone who wants to rely on NFC forum specifications. On the other hand, we also need to take care that harmonization we have achieved in the last years with EMVCO standards, or also ISO standards with respect to our small operating volumes. So whatever is in there is somehow harmonized to the other standards. And of course, we don't want to tackle this, or we don't want to destroy this harmonization, because also this is very important that we keep this work upright now. Yeah, and that's always, we need to find this balance always between too less power, too much power, small antenna, big antenna, communication distance, far. It's very complicated, and some use cases might need bigger antennas, others smaller antennas. So we need to clearly look into what exactly do we want to serve in the market. So that's more or less the field of tension in which we are moving, and it's very exciting to have all these discussions with the colleagues in our working group.
All right, and then Mohammed, would you want to add anything that Andreas didn't mention?
Thanks, Mike, but it'll be very difficult. I think Andreas said everything. I don't know what I have to say, but regarding the challenge that is waiting for the team, as you mentioned many times, this topic is still at research stage. We cannot, how shall I say it, promise or give numbers like that, or throw numbers in the air like that. It's quite difficult, and the NFC Forum is very cautious about such a kind of things. Usually when we promise, we deliver. And so just want to point something regarding what is one of the main challenge that the group or the team is facing, is to find this middle point, which means the optimal point of what is the maximum distance in z-axis that we can achieve with how many antennas size. As you, I think we all know, NFC Forum is defining several antenna sizes on transmitter side and receiver side to make it simple. And of course, those sizes are different, going from some small, medium to bigger, and depending on the use cases, depending on which device are you using, you have a certain antenna size. And then in our certification program, it's not a tendency, it's mandatory to fulfill all the combination between all the different antenna sizes. And therefore, some antenna sizes, due to the power or due to other issues or to the distance, cannot achieve what we would like to achieve. Therefore, the team is trying to find the best solution, the optimal solution to have the maximum possible distance in z-axis and achieving the maximum antenna sizes. Why? Because by doing so, we are sure to have the opportunity or the possibility to have different use cases with our distance that we are achieving. This is what I wanted to.
Great. Thanks. I do want to get to everybody on this particular topic, but just very briefly. So Dave, from your perspective over at MIT SIG, where do you think increasing the range will impact some of the work you're doing over there?
It's possible. I mean, if you look at maybe multimodal transport, etc., sometimes the almost touch and tap compared to a little bit more distance would be certainly an advantage for getting onto some forms of conveyancing. Identity, again, in some environments which aren't necessarily clean environments, that you don't want to actually touch the screen, which the current tap distance can often be betrayed for. So, it will widen the number of environments that we can use the NFC tap from a phone for different applications. Exact use cases, well, that's going to be down to the users once we can tell them what will be supported on different devices. That makes sense for all parties.
Yeah, great. Wolfgang, any quick thoughts from retail and payment, how things might change with increasing range?
Yeah. I think you will come to that one in the next point when we talk about the modernization of device. And as you have mentioned, there is this commercial off the shelf, this COTS scheme, where already MasterCard and Visa have created their programs like Tap on Phone or Tap to Phone. That means, you can turn every single regular off-the-shelf phone into a payment terminal to do contactless payments. And connecting back to what we do here now in the range extension, it's of course very vital because you can live, of course, with a smaller distance like this 0.5 centimeters that we have today. But of course, it's very, very beneficial if you look for getting a bigger volume and having more comfort, more reliability when you tap to this COTS devices.
Great. Zheng He, anything you'd want to add from an IT point of view that's not been mentioned already?
Yeah. So I think increasing the operating distance will bring the much better the user experience. So many users they have a difficulty to find the right points to tap with his or her mobile phone. So they do really making the honoring them to tap or rub their mobile phone on the devices. So absolutely, the increasing operating distance will bring the much better experience, and the user will be much more comfortable to tap their mobile phone to the devices.
Great. Stefan, and then I'll go finally to Taka here in a second. So Stefan, anything you'd like to add from the healthcare point of view around increasing range?
Yeah, I mean, healthcare industry is strongly surveilling NFC technology, and we have a lot of interesting application ideas. For example, we need a little bit of more power in order to realize some smart diagnostics devices, but also in terms of read range. There are definitely big advantages for user experience, because there are a lot of people out there who like to use NFC functions, but they are in some kind of way physically impaired or something, and it's just difficult to find the right place to tap the tag. And here it would be a big benefit for the patient if we have an increased reading distance and a bit more sensitivity in reaching the data on the tag.
Great. So TJ early on mentioned Asian markets and the interest in increasing range, and so I'll switch over really quickly to Taka. What have been, from the Japan task force point of view, what do you see as some of the opportunities for increasing range of NFC to enable use cases and additional markets in Asia? Taka?
Yes. Increasing operating volume is vitally important, especially tap on phone, tap on mobile. This is a much more modernization of device-to-device topics. But let me bring tap on phone first. This new use case has been shed light on Japan market as well. On Japan market, some pilot programs have been launched since 1 or 2 years before. Through these preliminary trials and for future preparation, we are having one challenge, which is a smartphone reader capability. There are many phone products on the market. Among these phones, which smartphone would be appropriate for tap on phone payment usage? In reality, all the smartphone products don't always meet end customers' expectation. How can we assure comfortable user interface or frictionless payment, card emission-oriented optimization, or take into reader performance account? So to discuss at this point, increasing operating volume is a key element, key index to discuss.
Great. Thank you. All right, so moving on, because we're running short on time, so we'll go on to the next item, which is around modernization device-to-device. So Taka, you've kind of already covered that. And given the shortness of time and the fact that we're very much in the research stage, I'll real quickly ask TJ, do you have any additional comments around modernization of device-to-device beyond what Taka has already mentioned from your perspective from the TC?
Right now, no. I think we need to, or we will increase the effort on that area. So it's still sort of in a beginning as well.
All right. And the last thing I'll mention about device-to-device, which I think some of our attendees will find of interest, is that the NFC Forum, well, at the beginning of this year, completed a variety of studies around device-to-device performance. And the results were very interesting and promising. and has helped identify some additional ways that we're thinking about that problem. But the good news is that if antennas are aligned, things work. The challenge is always making sure people have the antennas aligned, and so increasing range is one way we can obviously kind of solve that problem. So we're at 51 minutes past the hour. I'll go on to the last item that's on the work plan, which is around expanded data formats. I know a couple of you have been involved in the Sustainability Tiger team, and I will tell everyone that for those that don't know, at the member meeting, we will have a session where we're going to more broadly share that work. It's been very close to a small number of our members, but it'll be shared with all of our members for additional requirements gathering in our member meeting. And I've been facilitating quite a lot of conversations with other trade and industry groups in Europe around this challenge. But I know Zheng He has been really involved in this and has some additional perspective. So Zheng He, like, what would be some comments you would want to have around, some of the work we've been thinking about around sustainability and the DPP? What would be some of your thoughts there?
Yeah. So let me quickly mention about talk about this DPP. Yes, digital product passport is really to give the right the serial number or certificate to some device or the batch of the products, and then it's possible to trace all the informations along the life cycle of the products. So you already mentioned that when the customer is buying the product, everything, all informations are correct before buying that product and when they buy the product. But after buying, after consuming the product, they lose the information, how to recycle and how to reuse the products. So it will bring a lot of the issue in the EU. So it will increase a lot of carbon footprint. And then also there is very hazardous information because some materials has to be recycled correctly. But at the end of the life cycle, like 3 years or 10 years later, some of the like toxic chemicals can be leaked from the device, and then the many authorities they don't know how to handle that, how to recycle that properly. So from the sustainability point of view, so all the products shall be recorded and traced well, and then it should give the right the opportunity to be recycled. And another thing is also to cover is safety. So up to now, many products from to the EU. So there are some many fake products. Also because of this kind of issue, so sometimes sometimes it reveals a very toxic like material to our society. So because of this kind of safety issue, also we really need to control and trace all the products. So many optical traceability like barcode or QR code, it's also possible to put some information inside the data set, also possible to trace many of them using the cloud. But how about in 10 years? So that's the problem at the moment. Also, we are going into some like item level serialization. Still, the DPP is not fully standardized yet, but for this kind of item levels, like traceability, using some of the certificates or some of the private key information, like a PKI-based architecture, strongly welcomed by EU. Now the NFC can bring all kind of opportunity to bring the right opportunity to be recycled and to traceability. That's why we expect this NFC is really a good opportunity and the right technology for this the extended data format for DPP.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting conversation, and I'm looking forward to us sharing more about this work at the member meeting. And I've learned a lot, and I think Zhang Yi and others in the NFC forum for kind of nudging me in the direction of looking into this, because it's been really interesting, and it's a big opportunity for us, and also has a positive impact on the circular economy, which is fantastic. All right, well, we're 5 minutes too. Let me jump into the final slides. If you'd like to, you can go off camera now, because we don't need for you. If you don't want to be on, you don't have to be on. And as everyone's turning off their cameras, Taka, thank you so much for being up so late. I know it's very late in Japan, so thanks for being online and welcoming to join. So real quickly, closing comments. Next slide, please. Obviously, one of the key ways that you and your organization can get involved in these works is by becoming a member. All member classes are able to attend our member meetings. and can attend many of the conversations around use case ideation, and our adopter level membership does not require an annual fee. So I'd encourage you to go to our website and learn more about membership. You can do that at nfcforum.org/join. The next slide, please. As I've already mentioned a couple of times, the NFC Forum does have 2 member meetings per year. These are the face-to-face work meetings where we work on these items. Our next member meeting will be in Europe in Stuttgart the week of July 9th or July 10th on the 11th and 12th. You can register just by going to our website under Engage, and you'll see that you can sign up there. Sony will be hosting us, and our early bird discount rates do expire on Wednesday of this week. So if you're interested in coming, it's a very affordable trip, and I know that your business will benefit, and as well as the NFC Forum will benefit from your input at being in our member meeting. Next slide. And that actually wraps things up. So if you want to learn more about the NFC Forum, obviously come to our website. We're also available on most of the social channels that businesses operate on today. I do want to thank all of our panelists for joining and participating, and all of you for taking time out of your busy day to learn more about the roadmap and where NFC plans to go over the next 3 to 5 years. I thank all of you for your time and all your support. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.